What's up, everybody? Welcome to Now That's Debatable. We are live again. I hope you guys had a good holiday. If you are here with us, please feel free to say hello in chat. It'll be up on screen here in a second. We've got a new introduction page that we have up right now. Our guest is going to be coming up here in just a moment. So, in the meantime, I am going to go ahead and get Relic Media symbol up on the page, and my co host will tell you a little more about that. We do appreciate them partnering with us and helping us out so far, and we'll let uh, Tribble the Humanist tell you a little more about it.
Yep, just Relic Media is just a podcast streaming platform, and if you're looking to get your young new podcasts on the road and uh, open to more viewers, then hit us up, hit up Relic Media directly, and we'll get you in contact with the right people. Maybe we can get you part of the Relic Media family.
All right. Well, I was going to swap this over to our main page, but until Nico gets on, I think we'll just switch it over to a new outro that I designed. Uh, if you guys haven't already, please leave a like and subscribe on our videos. It's something that we've been uh, essentially just not asking you guys to do. So if you like what we do, um, please leave a like, please subscribe, share it, tell somebody. Also, we're looking for topic suggestions and looking for guests to come on the show. You don't have to be famous, you don't have to have your own YouTube, you just have to have an opinion that we disagree with. Uh, we promise to do our best not to gang up on you, but we would love to have a intellectual and honest discussion on a number of things. So we are open to topics. We have a few in mind that we're looking to discuss at some point in the near future. That includes like gun control. Um, what are some others that we definitely want to discuss that we have mentioned?
We had talked about um, what was it? Cultural appropriation. We talked about the gender transitioning for minors. We talked about what was another one. We're going to talk about council culture next week.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a lot of cool topics that we're going to be taking on. A lot of topics that we're not trying to take on stuff that's easy. We're not trying to take on stuff that's it's definitely going to have a particular solution. However, it's topics that need to be discussed, and
Yeah.
I think we do a fairly good job of that. And I think we, at least with the time format that we have currently, we have things going in a forward manner. So, I think if you have any topics that you'd like us to take on, or if you'd like to come on and discuss a topic of your choosing, please reach out to us. You can do so at Now That's Debatable Stream at Gmail. You can leave a comment in YouTube or on Facebook. Reach out to one of us directly. There's a million ways to do it. So thank you so much for the support that we've received so far. We do really appreciate it. This episode, we have a guest that's been on before, back when we really old school, Nico, and we're going to be talking about morality and ethics. So
He's,
that's going to be a pretty interesting one.
yeah, he's trying to join right now.
All right, sweet. So as soon as he gets back in here, we're going to go to the live video that we've been doing. And I'll have everybody's name up, I'll have live chat up, and we should be able to move forward.
All right. Okay. Perfect.
Sweet.
Nico,
What's going on?
what's going on, my man?
Let me get
How
you
you
guys
doing?
changed around, and then we'll take off.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry for the tad delay.
No
It's all good,
worries.
man. All good.
Also, I don't know if you guys have done this with other people before. Do you know if this audio that you're hearing right now is directly from my phone? Do you know if AirPods audio works better or worse? Is it
As far as I can tell, it's about the same. Your audio quality now isn't bad. If it was awful, I'd say we should try the other one, but it sounds pretty good to me. So
okay?
I'm gonna get us live up on the screen, and we can take off.
Fantastic.
All All right, I got chat up, you guys. I got us up. Our faces are up on the screen. I got live chat for questions, comments, concerns, and we are good to go. Where do we want to start?
That's good.
Cool. So, I remember from last time. It was a few months ago. You probably don't remember, but we talked about transgender topics like twice. I want to get to like another related topic, but another time.
Man, we can go wherever you want, man.
Yeah. But I remember the last episode we had kind of went to morality, and it was because kind of got off topic.
Mhm.
But and I said I wanted to get you back on to discuss how you base your ethics. So let's just say like an act stealing is wrong. So tell me why. What is your grounding for that? What's wrong with if I steal it from you? What's wrong with that? Why can't I do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, let me just preface by saying, forgive me if I don't, if I'm not well polished on different terminologies in philosophy or even in, ethics, Christian ethics, humanism, whatever the case. I consider myself very much so an amateur, although I do have strong opinions. I'm an amateur nonetheless, so
we're
amateurs. Forgive me. Okay, good. So forgive me in advance.
None of us are professionals here, so we do enjoy a good conversation. So
good. Okay, yeah. Well, I think primarily I would state, just using that example, what is wrong with stealing my shirt, for example? So first and foremost, I think that and this may be a little bit more humanist than from a biblical worldview, but whatever, we'll roll with it.
I like that.
I think that first and foremost, it's the mutual understanding, or what I guess maybe you could say the assumed mutual understanding that it is my property and that it belongs to me, and that I do not wish for you to steal it. I do not wish for you to take possession of it without my permission or without some sort of agreement, right? So that is just my personal preference for my belongings and the assumed mutual understanding that you recognize my shirt as my belonging, or you can naturally assume that it is my belonging because I'm wearing it. There's no one else laying claim to it and things of that nature. So I think that's first and foremost. But I think if a person stole my shirt and then when I tried to get it back, they essentially challenged me and said, why can't I steal your shirt? I wanted to have a discussion about it. Then I think at that point, I would get into my Christian ethics because I have a Christian worldview or a biblical worldview. The two are pretty interchangeable.
Well, why appeal to the humanism at all? You said that your first answer was more humanist than Christian. Why appeal to it at all? Shouldn't Christianity be sufficient?
Well, it may be, but I think that ethics supersede Christian understanding in that you can have ethics without having an understanding of God. I think that, for example, someone who's 35 years old has a worldview, has an understanding of ethics, but may not have, as far as they know, an understanding of God to where they can articulate, or they would say, well, why do you believe what you believe? They wouldn't mention God, but they still have a moral compass. So I don't think that the two are, I think there's a lot of opposition with the two, but I don't think that they are completely oppositional. I think there's a bit of a spectrum between the two.
Okay.
So that's why.
Gotcha. So here's my view. Like I think the Christian ethics is totally like unnecessary. Like I think you can have objective morality without appealing to Christian ethics at all. And as a matter of fact, I think religion, the Abrahamic God in particular, adds problems to ethical system. Like for instance, this as a secular humanist, this is how I would explain morality, right? So when we talk about morality, essentially we're talking about well-being, right? They're almost like the same thing, right? You could use them like synonymously, because like if I say for right now, like you're wearing, you have 3 buttons on your shirt, and if I were to say that was immoral, you would want some sort of justification for why I think that's immoral. And what would you be looking for is how that I would have to demonstrate how that is causing somebody harm. I will have to demonstrate how it is violating somebody else's well-being. If I couldn't do that, you would say that, at least I would think you would say that I didn't prove that it was immoral. So when we talk about morality, that's what we're talking about, well-being. And the facts of the universe determine well-being. For instance, like if I take a shotgun and blast you in the back of the head, that is objectively not good for your well-being. That is not a matter of opinion. That is a fact, regardless of who thinks about it, regardless of what you think about it, regardless of what God thinks about it. It is reality itself, the way that physics and the way the laws of nature affects us determines what's moral. So it is objective. And so then, to me, adding that there is a supernatural being that also doesn't like it, to me, is totally unnecessary. It got to just be a very powerful person with an opinion, but it doesn't make it objective. That's what I think. Christian ethics is totally insufficient for that, especially if you have a God like the Abrahamic God who went around doing a bunch of things that and most people, I would suspect even you, if we didn't say who was responsible, if we just described the act, you would have said that is also immoral. Kind of like genocide, etc.
Quite possibly. No, that's interesting. Okay, so let me ask you this, because I think you said, or not I think you said, but when you said the Abrahamic God is or Christian and the Christian ethics are unnecessary, I'm actually okay with you saying that if you can also prove that they, how do I word this? That the God of the Bible doesn't exist. Because to say that he is unnecessary, then you also essentially have to say, or you're coming from a worldview of the human, and perhaps this is why you're humanist, the human as the power and the authority to determine what is necessary. So who am I, or who are you to say, oh, the God of the Bible and the Christian ethics that protrudes from that God, in order for you to state that he and that is unnecessary, you have to have authority to do so. And I guess my question is, what gives you that authority to state that that Christian ethics are unethical? What will give me the authority? What will give anybody that authority?
So I don't think facts are determined by authority. Like, so it is, to me, it either is the case that the Abrahamic God is necessary for objective morality, or it is not the case. Okay. Right. And so whether or not I can determine which one is the case is just a matter of my rationality, my ability to comprehend it. So authority doesn't necessarily come in. The reason I would say that I don't have to prove that God doesn't exist is because I can explain objective morality without him. Kind of like what I just did like 2 minutes ago when I talked about blasting you in the back of the head, right? I can say he's objectively wrong, because when I talk about morality, we're talking about well-being. It's just the way of physics, right? The way when the shotgun blast that material is going to affect your head. It's going to destroy it. That is going to be bad for your well-being, regardless of what God thinks about it.
And that's a good point. And now that you mentioned that again, I want to dig deeper into that. So I think that example, of all the examples you could have used, that's probably a tighter example, in that most people would agree that it's not good to have your head blown off by a shotgun. However, even with that example, there are holes in that as well, because, at what point do you or anybody else decide what is good or bad for my well-being? And I'll use this example to be specific. Like, perhaps if I'm just sitting down in my house drinking coffee, like I am right now, and somebody blew my head off with a shotgun, perhaps most people would agree that that's not good. But if I, was walking down the street shooting other people in the face with a pistol, perhaps blowing my head off with a shotgun is the best decision to make. So I think that I like your example because in general, I think it works, but there are situations where it doesn't work. And getting away from that example, let's take it a step further. So in general, who determines whose well-being, who determines whether or not someone's well-being is in jeopardy or not? Because what I may feel is good for me may indeed be bad for me, or you may feel is bad for me, or my parents may feel is bad for me. Who determines what someone's, what's in someone's favor or not, and at what point?
Okay. Before I go there, I do have an answer for when you talked about the mass murder. You said if you were going around shooting other people, shot you in the back of the head, and something did somebody shoot you in the back of the head. That would be like, I have an answer for that. But
sure.
But I don't want to get lost in the weeds here. So let's talk about who determines what's good for well-being. Like,
yes.
Like there is no who. Like it's the physics, right? Physics, right? Which builds chemistry, which builds biology.
I don't think physics is good enough though.
It does. So this. Think about this. So like my child, I have a little girl. She's sitting right here watching Finding Nemo. So I can keep quiet, right? So like she's thirsty. I give her some water, right? Water is good for her well-being. Right?
Sure.
So nobody determined that. It's just the way our physiology is made. But
what if she wants soda?
So soda, I wouldn't give her soda.
And what if I, as an adult, want soda? And who says it's good or bad for me?
Okay, so let's stick to one thing. Right? So we're talking about to my daughter, right? So if I were to give her, I'll give her water. Nobody had to determine whether or not water was good for her well-being, right? Because her physiology determined that. Right? If she had, let's say she had some altered physiology, whereas battery acid was good for her well-being, then it would be good for me to give her battery acid.
Sure.
But now it's not the case. Battery acid isn't good for her. So me giving her battery acid would be immoral. There's nobody been able to, there's nobody needed to determine that. Like the laws of physics has determined that. Battery acid is going to have an adverse effect on your biology, but it's going to have an adverse effect on your well-being because health is part of well-being. So there is no who required to determine that.
Well, here's the problem I have with the example that you give, because you're using things that you may not realize that you're using. So for example, you use the example of your child. Whether you realize it or not, you are in authority over your child, and you don't let your child. How old is your child?
Oh, she's 2.
2. Okay. I have a 1.5-year-old and I have an 8-year-old. And my 8-year-old consistently, every single day of her life, chooses and desires to make decisions that are not good for her, right? Or are not good for her in mass. And that's, for example, if she has school tomorrow morning, she wants to stay up until 1 a.m. and she's going to have trouble getting up in the morning and having a productive day at school. So I determined that, no, you can't stay up till 1 a.m. You have to go to bed early. So and I do that as the authority. She may not have the understanding of going to bed on time to having a more productive day tomorrow. She may not have the understanding of a healthy diet, but as her authority, I have a little bit more understanding than she does. So even in your example that you're using yourself, who has authority over her, and you're doing something for her that you state is objectively good for her, which is giving her water, which that's fine. I'm actually okay with that example in general, because I agree that water is good for you. But now let's expand this a little farther. Like if I'm an adult and I want, so the argument gets so cluttered.
Can we go back? Because you were talking about how you're an authority over your kid. Like she doesn't want to go to school, right? Or she doesn't want to eat healthy or something like that. So you as an authority figure, you're the father, you get to make her eat healthy.
Sure.
Right? And hey, sit down. I'm bad.
No, you good.
Sit down. Okay. So here's the thing. Like you're as an authority, like, you're acting as her steward.
Okay,
right?
Sure.
So but you don't have, your authority doesn't change the law of physics, right? So you can't say, I now as authority make battery acid healthy for you.
Correct.
It is objective. So that's what we're talking about with morality. Your authority does nothing to alter that.
But well-being goes beyond physics.
Well, no, no. Well, what I'm saying is the physics is what's determining the well-being. The reason why
Well,
something is
that's only
immoral.
one path though. That's so
Well,
linear.
What the
Like,
not
what does
necessarily.
physics have to do with my shirt being stolen, for example? At what point is that physics? Does
That's
physics
gonna
prove that that's good or bad for
so
me?
that's going to harm your well-being. So that's what. So like.
Says
So, no,
wait,
so,
wait, what?
so I'm sorry. So look. So when we're talking about there's a lot of reasons why things could be harmful to your well-being. Health is just one of them, right? Also wealth, right? When I say wealth, I'm not talking about being rich. I'm talking about access to resources, food, medicine, shelter, stuff like that. So and also we talk about happiness, right? So stealing from you is going to deplete your wealth. It's going to make you less happy, and it could, depending on the circumstances, make you less healthy, right? If you need that shirt for to keep warm and stuff like that. So that is going to affect your will. That is
there is no way. Hold on. There is no way you can objectively state that having my shirt stolen is bad for my well-being. Now, I don't believe in theft as a virtue, but you can't state that it's objectively bad for my well-being. Am I materialistic? Do I have too many shirts? How did I acquire this shirt?
Okay.
You can't objectively say that just because it is stolen, it deteriorates my well-being, to a degree. You can't state that. And if so, how can you?
So wait a minute. So I'm not trying to make the ontological statement about whether or not the shirt being stolen from you is going to harm your well-being. If it does harm your well-being, then it would be immoral. That's what we're talking about. So like if we lived in an alternate universe where if I take your shirt, you could just instantly generate another one, then it wouldn't be immoral because it wouldn't harm you at all.
Okay.
So when we talk about when we talk about an act, the consequences of the act is what makes it immoral. If I were to shoot you in the back of the head, right, back to that, and it had no effect at all, like it just bounced off or it just disappeared, it wouldn't be wrong because it wouldn't harm you. You could say, hey, what's wrong with shooting Nico in the back of the head? It didn't harm him. He's totally fine. It wouldn't be immoral. So
okay, that's what I'm talking about. So I completely disagree. I think, I see. I think your premise that as a whole, that does not stand. You can't judge, in my opinion, you can't judge right and wrong based on consequences because there are times where there are not consequences.
We got to be more specific. I said an act, right? I said an act, right? You can also have a wrong intent, but then the act produces something beneficial. So I separate intent from act. So I said the act. The reason why the act is immoral is because of the consequences.
All right, so let me ask you this, and this, I'm going to try and create a scenario that makes sense for what I'm trying to prove here. So to be clear, let's say let's say that I had a clothing store, for example. I owned a clothing store, and that clothing store was insured. And it was really good insurance that for any insurance claim that I made, it had no effect on my insurance premium. Say my insurance was $1,000 a month, and I had a lifetime deal of $1,000 a month, regardless of the size or frequency of the claims that I make for this insurance. It will be $1,000 a month until the end of time.
Okay, so your premium stays the same. It's permanently fixed.
Yeah, premium permanently fixed, regardless of claims, frequency, or size. So if someone comes into my store and steals clothing, because of my insurance, the clothing gets replaced like that, however long shipping takes, and I get the clothing back. I don't lose out on any money, and my premium doesn't exist. So based on your definition of morality, that person who stole did nothing wrong. Is that correct?
No.
Why not?
So like your premium stays the same regardless of how much you're going to cost your insurance company, right? Okay. So like in this way, they would be stealing from the insurance company.
Okay.
So like so
it's wrong because.
Well, because somebody's being harmed. Like in this situation, I guess the insurance company is being harmed. Like they're protecting you. If we were to alter the scenario where when somebody comes and steals the shirt, then another shirt just morphs into existence and replaces it. There's no harm coming to you.
So it's not wrong for that person.
Well, if
Well, I mean, yes, in that
when a
scenario,
person
that
takes
last
it,
scenario.
when you take your if you take a shirt and then it's instantly replaced,
Mhm.
kind of like if I go and steal money from Facade, I steal $100 from Facade, and then $100 instantly just pops into his bank account. Like I didn't harm him in any way. So the only reason, I don't want to get like too deep into property rights here, but the only reason that the property even exists is because the scarcity in resources.
Sure.
If it was unlimited amount of resources, you wouldn't need to have property. You could just take whatever you want. I could take your phone, you just boom, another phone will come into existence. So, but because of scarcity, there's not enough for everybody to go around. If I take from you, it's going to harm you.
Sure.
That's why it's immoral. If it did not harm you, then it wouldn't be immoral. And that's what we do. We're talking about the act, not the intent. There's ways that I could cause. There's ways that I could actually negatively affect your well-being, but the intent not be wrong.
I see. Okay,
So,
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I think there's still holes within that view of morality, because again, what one person might feel harms them, another might feel that it doesn't. And
so that's the feeling is totally irrelevant. So like we're talking about the ontological fact. Does it harm them? If it does,
there's not.
Regardless of
you can't prove that everything harms someone.
So
not everything can be verifiably. Not everything you can't verify harm for everything.
I think you're conflating epistemology with ontology. So because you're talking about whether or not we could actually know whether or not we harm somebody. I'm talking about whether or not someone's actually harmed, regardless of knowledge.
But how do you?
Can I steel man Nico for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
I think here's what's going on. So I'm going to try to steel man Nico's argument.
Okay.
And
then Nico confirm.
Yeah, and if I'm off on this, just correct me. But here's where I think maybe you're kind of coming from: is what if I decide to hang out in my house and drink a fifth of liquor? Okay, is that right or wrong?
So this is what we're talking about.
How would you determine that?
How would I determine whether or not it's right or wrong?
Yeah.
So
because
there's a lot of things that we could weigh because we're talking about your
health versus happiness.
Also we're talking about like your freedom.
Yeah, health versus happiness and freedom. So my question is, if I find it perfectly fine and I enjoy it because I enjoy drinking to the point of getting drunk, which I don't do, you're aware of that. But let's just say hypothetically I wanted to do so. But we also know that drinking in excess is bad for your liver. Doesn't my right to my happiness outweigh the negative health benefit or negative health, in that moment, and potentially ongoing health problems that you could have due to liquor? Because what's more important to me is my happiness.
Okay, that's like a good still man for you, Nico, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just to be clear, so we've changed the topic because I was talking about moral ontology. Now we're talking about moral epistemology, right? We're talking about how do we know whether something affects your well-being, not what is morality.
Don't you have to? You can't just stay in the ontology without jumping into the epistemology.
Well, they're both important because when I was talking about objective morality, it has to be ontological. Right.
Okay, but as you dig into and try to sort it out, you have to jump into the epistemology because you're stating absolutes. You
definitely do. Okay,
yeah, so
and that's why.
How about to kind of continue with that same frame as M commented? Let me get this comment out real quick. M commented said, like, what about like weightlifting? We're harming ourselves, but at the same time, it's beneficial. Obviously, like as you're building muscle, you actually tear the muscles in your body, but over time, it benefits you in the fact that you're able to lift more.
Yes, I was going to bring up exercise.
Okay, so all right, so like I'm gonna give you an epistemic answer, and I'm gonna give you an ontological answer.
Okay.
Right. I'm gonna give you an ontological answer first. Right. The ontological answer is if for the weightlifting and for the drinking, either is or is not immoral, whether or not you drink all day or weightlift. All right. So let's use weightlifting because that's what was in the chat, right? Because you're bringing this issue, right? It either is or is not immoral, whether or not you weightlift. Okay. That is so that is the ontological fact. So boom, we have objective morality. No God needed. Now, so now when we talk about epistemology, how do we know whether or not it's immoral? Well, investigate. And there's different ways you can investigate. So we talked about, I think generally most people would agree that weightlifting is good for you. So let's talk about out drinking all day, right? So there's different ways we can do this. We can do scientific studies, see how much he's drinking, how that affects other parts of his life. We can also try to weigh in freedom and see how if the government were to control him and stop him from drinking, how would that be more or less beneficial to not only his well-being, but well-being as a society? What kind of precedent are we setting? So we would have to investigate. So I can't give you a definitive answer. Like this would actually have to take some research. Generally, as a libertarian, as an anarcho-capitalist, I on the side of freedom, right? So okay. I'm like, if you want to sit in the house and drink all day and destroy your physical well-being, I'm all for that. You should be allowed to do that. So, but that's how you do that. You investigate. You use science. That's pretty much it.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. I think I see how you're separating the two. You're saying at the end of the day, from an epistemology standpoint, you investigate to determine how we know whether or not it is right or wrong in the case. But yes, at the end of the day, either way, it is either immoral or not.
Yes, because we're talking. Because here's the thing. So it either is or me drinking a substance either is or is not harmful to my well-being.
Okay.
And then how that's just the fact. So that's just the ontological fact. Now, how do you know drinking that substance is or is not harmful to my well-being? You investigate. Okay. And there's different, and that's what I'm talking about. That is the epistemology of it.
Okay. So then I see I think I understand what you're saying. I think the issue that I have with that is, if we're going to, because at the end of the day, this leads back to the decisions we make and why we make them. And I think you would really have to, there's just so many hundreds of thousands of daily decisions, things we do and don't do, things we say and don't say, that we act on because of our moral compass, our worldview, and to
tell me, how does God contribute to that? When we're talking about if we talk about Facade sitting in his house drinking all day, like how does God help that?
Sure.
In a way?
Well, first let me challenge the way you worded that. You said, how does God contribute to that? And I think I understand what you're saying, but let me position it this way. It's almost like we're literally sitting here having a discussion, and we're talking and we're sorting things out. We're having this discussion, and then it's almost like the discussion is here, and then you say, how does God contribute to that? Like, how does God fit into that? And I think that perspective is warped. I think it's the opposite. It's not so much how does God fit in, it's how do we fit into God. And that's because of the worldview that I have. But I believe that it's not so much, and this is when it comes down to Christian ethics versus humanism, it starts with, I think, what's at the core, what's at the center, what's the focus. And even that question puts the human at the focus, because it's like, here we are, how does God fit in? But I don't believe the reality of the world is that way. I believe it's there. Here God is. How do we humans fit into his agenda?
But shouldn't your well-being be at the focus? Like, so back to the, I hate to keep using like killing you as an example, but all right, so
No, I'm for it.
so I shoot you in the back of the head, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it should be the consequences that it have on you that is most important. You're saying we should let's ignore the harm that it does to Nico and to your children and to Flo and everybody and all your family members that's going to be missing you. Let's talk about what God thinks.
No. So my statement or my position is not to ignore the consequences, how it affects me and my family and what have you. And just ask ourselves what God thinks. Again, I think that the reality of existence is it's a spectrum. There's God, and then there's the humanistic viewpoint. I think they almost coexist. For example, I don't think, while I do believe that God is in everything, and a lot of the conclusions that we naturally come to about right and wrong, I believe they are given to us by God. However, we can still, or even so,
I
we
want
can
to challenge
still,
you on that.
Yeah. We can get into it, but
Okay.
I still think that we as individuals, as humans, one of the things that naturally all mammals, I shouldn't even say mammals, I shouldn't limit that to mammals, maybe all creatures are given instinctively is survivalism, that instinct to survive, to create the world around, or not to create, but to influence the world around us so that we can persist and survive. And you see that among all creatures. And so I think that that's just one of the many things that for some reason is within us. It's within animals and mammals and creatures and organisms. It's to survive. Where did that come from? Why is that there? How does that work itself out? And I think that's natural. I think that's built in. Just like I think that oftentimes, right and wrong and morals are built into us.
So how about this from a Christian point of view? Like shooting you in the back of the head. Why is it wrong?
From a Christian worldview, I think because the Bible states not to murder.
Can I go one further?
The simplest way I can put that. Go ahead.
How about cloning?
How about what?
Cloning.
Oh yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Like what's the
first, do you think cloning's wrong?
Yeah, that's literally what I'm asking. Like, what's the Christian stance on cloning?
I personally have no stance on cloning whatsoever.
Okay. All right.
I don't.
Would you say that a worldview that has a stance on it, or at least could provide a good standpoint in which you would have a hard time defeating, would at least on the stance of cloning be a better worldview than the Christian one?
No, not necessarily better.
Well, right,
at least
now
more complete.
Yeah, at least more complete.
Yeah, because like
that's not. I'm not in saying that I have no point. I'm not representing Christian ethics as a whole. I'm saying Nico has no stance on cloning, just based on my understanding of it. There might be someone else in the, right? Or say it again.
You're a Christian, right?
I am.
Okay, so like, what's your personal opinion, given your stance of the Bible and the world and as we know it, on cloning? Like, would you say, and intuitively, whether it's right or wrong, just intuitive feeling based on the Christian perspective?
And that's what I was initially answering. I don't have any opinion on whether it's right or wrong, just because I don't even know what that entails. Okay. All I know is I can. If you ask me to define cloning, I would just say it's scientifically recreating a human, right? Okay. Like recreating a person. And so I don't know. I don't know whether it's right or wrong. As far as I know, the Bible doesn't speak on it. As far as what harm it does to people or humans, I have no idea. Is it even possible? Possibly. I mean, who knows? Okay. I don't know.
Fair enough. So
yeah.
You had said something is wrong because the Bible says something, and the reason why you say like,
well, yeah, because you asked from a Christian ethics standpoint, why is it wrong?
Yeah, and like to take it even further back, it's because God believes it's wrong, right? Then that's why the Bible says it, but not because a book says a thing.
I wouldn't say yes. I wouldn't say because God believes it's wrong. I would say yes, that's God's standard.
Okay, so how does that make it objective? Because it seems to me that saying that God says something is wrong, that he's a really powerful person with an opinion, because his omnipotence doesn't make his opinions objective facts.
Say that one more time.
So what I'm saying, so God's omnipotence does not make his opinion an objective fact. Just because you're all powerful and believe something or offended by something doesn't make it an objective fact. So what I'm saying, so if God says murder is wrong, it doesn't him being offended by murder doesn't make it objectively wrong. It is just his opinion.
Well, no one stated that he was necessarily offended by murder.
For whatever reason God would say that it's wrong, it's just his opinion. From my point of view, like I just
no.
So think about this
opinion, because again, and it's I understand how this is. It's difficult even for me to state what I'm stating. It's difficult because we come from two different worldviews. But for example, if you look at the world and if you are under the belief and the assumption that God created the world, then it's also natural to assume that he sets forth the rules for the world's existence and humans' existence because he created us.
But that's still subjective. Because
that's
still subjective. It's still based on his mind. I kind of like if I I'm a computer engineer, like for NASA, right? And I do I make cool things for computers, right?
Sure.
And so I make the rules. It doesn't. So those rules were subjective. Like they came from me. I couldn't make them do something else. It wouldn't make it a moral fact just because I designed it. So what I'm saying is just because God designed the universe, that doesn't make him an objective.
The difference is, so when you use yourself as an example, you as a computer engineer, it's like, yes, you may write the rules and the code for how that computer operates, but you are not the end all be all of existence. Where in the Christian worldview, God is the end all be all, right? There's nothing bigger, there's nothing wider, there's nothing more powerful. Therefore, what he sets forth is objective. See, you have to it's not he is, his way is objective. Objectivity is him, right? It's not like,
could you define objective? Because maybe we're using different word. Maybe we're using the same word meaning different things. But when I say objective, I mean mind independent.
Okay, when I mean objective, I mean non-malleable, set in stone, doesn't change.
Okay, so
and I think the reason why God is able to set what is objective is because he's the end all be all.
So how about this? So how about this? So like, because this is maybe we're talking about different things. Because because my system is objective, but it's still malleable. It could change, but if the consequences did. So like if I were to feed you battery acid, let's say, well, I'm not your steward, I'm not your parent. But if I were to feed my daughter battery acid, right? But let's say her physiology, if I feed her battery acid right now, it would be immoral because of the harm that it has on her. But if her physiology changed and battery acid was good for her, then it would be moral for me to feed her that. So
fair.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. So it's still objective. So it is the ontological fact that battery acid right now will harm her. Her physiology changes. Now it is the ontological fact that the battery acid does not harm her. So it went from objectively immoral to objectively moral. So it stayed the same. That's what I'm saying. So subjective means it's a matter of opinion, like whether or not I don't like something. And that seems to be what I guess what you're saying from God. Like God doesn't like something. Like God doesn't like murder, right?
Yeah,
so that's why it's wrong.
I understand why you're stating it in that way. God doesn't like it, but I would not state it in that manner because I don't think what God sets forth as right and wrong and what he has revealed in the Bible or through the Bible as right and wrong, I don't believe that's based on what he likes and dislikes or what just his almost what his flippant opinions are. I think that that once he created humans, I think that when he created humans, he created along with them a set of rules that were to govern the way they are to operate on Earth. And I think humans are not the end all be all. They had a creator, someone that is bigger, larger, wider, smarter, more knowing than they are, and essentially infinite, right? So because we had a creator, then we are subject to the creator's rules that he sets forth. And I think that's it. Go ahead.
Are you saying that so the creator's rules do align to some objective standard?
Yes, or in that they are objective standard. Do you know what I mean?
Well, not so because
and by the way, I don't necessarily expect you to adopt that. I'm just saying from my worldview, this is what I believe and why.
So because if you're saying there are just his standard, like they could have just been anything, then that means they're subjective, right? Now, if we say they align, if they align to a standard, right? In that case, there would be objective. However, you don't need a standard. You can just look at the objectiveness of it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do not understand what you're saying.
Okay. All right. So think about this. So like God says murder is wrong, right? Okay. So the reason why he said murder is wrong is because there is some objective reason why he said it's wrong, right? Like what's the reason God said murder is wrong?
I don't know the reason. I can't state the reason.
Okay, make one up. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay.
God said murder's wrong because more
it hurts people.
Yeah, it hurts people.
I'm
okay. Physically causes harm to other people.
So here's the point. So like, if we're saying God said murder is wrong because it hurts people, it is the ontological fact that murder hurts people, regardless of whether or not God says it's wrong. He doesn't need to say that. So you can just use the fact that it hurts people for saying that it's wrong. God totally isn't necessary for it. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think
if you just base it on something else, God's feelings or him, I don't know, or I know you don't like me saying him being offended by it, or just whatever God's mind is just subjective. It's just based on his opinion.
I think that just because you are able to understand and articulate a reason for murder being wrong doesn't mean you can articulate that without mentioning God, doesn't mean that the statement or the reality doesn't need God.
Okay, how about this? Okay, so let's say let's just say right now, boom, there's no God, right? Is murder okay now?
I don't know.
Okay, well, for me, it still wouldn't be okay.
Reality where there's no God.
Okay, so, I'll be willing to debate you on that. I think
I'm not sure about the simulated world you're referring to.
I'd beg to differ.
Sounds interesting.
All right.
Never heard of
it. Okay, however, let's say like if we're because when we talk about morality, right? And did you agree earlier when I said morality? When we talk about morality, we're talking about well-being.
I think well-being is incomplete, but it's good. I'm okay with going down that route. I think it's incomplete, but I'm okay going down that route.
Because to me, like I just don't see like what else do you need? Because that is anytime anybody has ever said something's wrong, what they're pointing to, whenever they try to justify it, they try to show a harm. That's always what it goes to. They say, hey, this is wrong because it hurts the butterflies, or it does blah blah blah, it's gonna hurt the planet. Like they try to point to some sort of harm. Right?
Sure.
That is always what a justification for a proposition that something's immorality always is. You try to point to the harm. And if you can demonstrate that, then boom, you win the argument. It is now immoral. I don't see what else.
I guess I don't understand. I've heard that, and I understand that. I don't know that I agree though. Like I don't know that I agree that you need to be able to display harm and show how it harms one or the other to one party or another to
give me an example of something that's immoral where it doesn't harm anyone in any way.
Well, it may be difficult, but I'll give you my best shot. For example, let's say you have a married couple and the male feels as though he should be able to interact sexually with as many women as he'd like. And the woman feels as though that's wrong and he should only interact with her sexually. So from her standpoint,
but it's already harm. Yeah,
again?
like I would say there's already harm in that. Like,
well, hold on. We'll get there. We'll dig into it. So from her perspective, him making that choice or even wanting to make that choice is harmful to her. But from his perspective, her demanding that he is only with her is harmful to him. He's like, honey, you can't keep up with my sexual needs. You can't, like, you know, there's 3 different times a week where I want to interact sexually and you're not interested. So if I'm able to interact with someone, and again, this is not necessarily this example is not necessarily my worldview. I'm just using this as an example that how do we determine harm? Who determines what is, and who has the final say on what is or is not harmful?
It's not a who. The universe already determined that. Like, it's just physical. So in that scenario, you're causing a great deal of psychological and emotional harm to the woman. That's what, because I was asking for an example of something that's immoral but doesn't harm anyone. This, like, I would say it's harming people. But that's again, why it's immoral.
But again,
and so it's only the harm part that's making it immoral.
Let me ask you this: if she never finds out and she has no way to find out, is it wrong?
If she never finds out?
If she never finds out and never has any way to find out, is it wrong?
Yes.
Why?
Yes, it is. Well, because we can talk about lying, deceit, and talking about the harm that does to society. What if everybody did that?
No. I'm not talking about deceit. This is not even a discussion. She doesn't bring it up. She doesn't suspect it.
Sure.
This is just he's just interacting with multiple people, and she's just living her life as his wife.
Okay, I just like this is the thing. I don't want to be like I don't want to be myopic with the consequences because when you do an act, you not only have to consider the immediate consequences, but also the long-term consequences, and as well as the precedent that you're setting, right? Because so we could talk about why lying would be harmful, right? Because we talk about to have any sort of good, effective communication. You need truth. Imagine if we lied just as often as we told the truth. We couldn't even assemble this podcast right now, 3 people. Because what if I was lying just as often I told you the truth? I sent you the wrong link, or I told you 6 p.m. and I said 5. Like we couldn't get anything done. That would not be good for society. So this was another good way. So you could just look in the act and just say, what if this just happened all the time? What would be the effects? Would it be harmful or beneficial for well-being? Again, we're talking about harm. We're talking about well-being.
You can't just well-being is not just floating in the middle of the air. To be well-being is like there's his well-being, there's her well-being, there's the family's well-being, there's society's well-being.
And that's what we're doing. We're considering
what if
all
he's
of it.
more inclined to divorce her because he wants to be more sexually active, and now the family's broken up. But if she would have allowed him to be sexually active while married, he would have never left her because he was totally fine. You see, the well-being is so widespread and so you can't just say there's well-being right here. It is, or it's like well-being is too. It's not. That's why I say it's not good enough. It's not deep enough.
But it's not because right now you're pointing into some of the epistemological. You're pointing to some of the epistemic problems.
But you have to
because you're trying.
You have to because it comes to a head.
Epistemology doesn't make it objective. You don't have to know about it whether or not it's objectively immoral or not. For example, right, the Andromeda Galaxy, right? It exists way before we knew about it. Right, so we had no epistemology of the Andromeda Galaxy was 0. Yet its ontology was 1. It existed.
Okay,
so that's what I'm talking about. So when we talk about the morals ontological value, it exists. So it is. So that scenario you gave, it is either has a positive or negative effect.
Well, I'm
on
okay
well-being.
with you saying that, but in order to discuss it, we have to move to epistemology in order to discuss it.
So that's a very complicated scenario that would involve like a lot of different things. We could do psychological evaluations on everybody.
Correct. And my point is, I don't. And again, that's just an off the cuff example, but that's that's why I don't believe that well-being is wide enough. It's not good enough.
The way you would figure that out is you investigate. Like adding God into the picture wouldn't help that at all.
I'm not stating that it would.
Well, tell me. So how was it helpful?
How was what helpful?
So with your analogy, like what does God contribute to that when we talk about it?
Well, again, going back to how God plays into this. Again, I don't think this conversation is being had, and then we go back and say, how does God fit in? I don't think that's not my perspective on it. I think there's God, period. Then we've got to figure out how we fit into his reality, because I think his reality is bigger than our reality, because we are derived from his reality, not the opposite.
So that's okay. When we talk about his reality, so we could just use his reality and not God. So we could take God's reality, take God, reality. That's what I'm talking about. Reality determines right and wrong because of the ontological consequences that your acts have. All we need is the reality. Now, putting God inside his reality does nothing. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Even the illustration that you just did, where you had reality and you removed God, you can verbally do that. In discussion, you can portray that illustration. I don't believe you can do that in reality. I believe that if you have the reality at all, God is intertwined and it's inseparable. So although you can articulate that, and although you can state that as maybe a concept for us to investigate, I don't believe in the reality that exists is of God.
Okay,
period.
So I have a question you probably have come across before, and it's a little wordy the way it has to be worded, but
Sure.
do my best to state it clearly.
I may have come across it before.
Yeah,
I haven't had a ton of these
probably
discussions.
have, because I definitely did when I was a professing Christian. And the question is something good because God says it is good, or is something good because God commands it to be good?
Is something good because God says it is good, or is something good because God commands it to be good?
Yeah, essentially the question is, like, if God says that murder is wrong, does that mean murder is wrong because God said so? Or is God just stating that murder is wrong?
I've never come across that question, but now that I hear it, I think murder is wrong because, I think if God states that murder is wrong, it's
now wrong, right? It is now immoral.
I wouldn't
God
say
said so.
I see what you're saying. So I think I may have to go with the other. Like, it's not wrong now because God said so. I think if God's stating it, it's almost God speaking about the reality, even though the reality is from him. You know what I'm saying? I don't think it's a timeline of like, there's murder and then, hey, that's wrong. And so, hey, murder is now wrong, as if at some point it wasn't. I think that when it comes to God and the rules of the universe that he sets forth, right, the only timeline that exists is like the beginning, right? Because at the beginning, it's all almost simultaneous. At the moment you have humans with the capability to murder, you also have the reality of murder, whether it's happened or not. And then once it happens, it's like, I don't think God says, let's see, I don't like that, let's go with bad, right? I think the moment that whoever was the first person to murder, and I think it says in the Bible, I think it might have been Cain, if I remember correctly.
It was Cain.
Cain, yeah. So I don't think that God decided after the fact. I think murder was wrong.
Okay, so murder was wrong whether God ever stated it or not.
I would say yes.
So why does it matter what God's opinion is?
Well, again, it doesn't necessarily.
Okay, so like if God didn't exist, like let's just say if God didn't exist, murder would still be wrong because it doesn't matter whether he says it's wrong or not. It would have just been wrong, right? Like you just said, like murder would be wrong whether God ever commanded it or not.
Well, when you said when I'm saying murder will be wrong whether God commands it or states it or not, I'm talking about whether God literally, verbally, or however you view that,
I mean, I'm okay with you saying it in any way. If God ever thought about it and it came into fruition, if God ever verbally spoke the credo, if God wrote it down on a stone tablet for Moses at Mount Sinai, I could care less. If God hadn't done those things, would murder still be wrong?
And again, my answer is yes, because I think that humans are finite. And so you're a human, you're born, you're an infant, you grow, whatever, and you have an adult understanding. So at a certain point, you as a finite creature, you have to come into the understanding, but that doesn't mean just because you have a timeline as a finite creature, doesn't mean murder as a right and wrong has a timeline or is finite. As soon as it's possible, as soon as the humans exist on the planet and murder is possible, I think there's already a rule, and I think that rule is set forth by God, whether He states it or not.
So I have a couple questions for you. One, can God murder?
Can God murder?
Yeah.
I do not believe God can murder.
Gotcha. So if God kills a human, it's not murder.
Mm-hmm. Correct. I do not believe it's murder.
And if I kill another human, it's murder.
Correct.
Well, like, with the exception of cases like self-defense. Like, if I intentionally kill
no, actually, self-defense is still murder. But it's
I mean, murder. Most people
it's the homicide.
Most people would.
Well, yes. It's still, yeah. You're right. It's still homicide.
Not in a state of
Self-defense or not, it is still homicide.
Right, but not murder.
Sure. Right. Homicide.
So, what's the difference in God and me, and the fact that He cannot murder someone, but I can? What separates Him from being able to murder someone?
So I think it's the fact that us as humans, again, we are finite creatures and we are given to right and wrong doing. God is not given to right and wrong doing. God does not, and again, I don't expect you to adopt this worldview. I'm just stating, if you believe in God, these are essentially mandates for believing in God if you believe He is who He says He is. So He's not given to right and wrong, which means there are zero choices, decisions or actions that He makes that are wrong. Now He may make a decision, and I can give you an example from the Bible, and you may be familiar with it as a former Christian, but there are decisions and things that God does that He says, you know what, I won't do that again, or I'm no longer going to operate this way. But it doesn't mean the initial decision that He made was wrong, because God, in order for God to be God, He cannot be given to sin. He cannot have, it's not possible for any action of His to be sinful. The moment that's possible, He's no longer God.
Gotcha. So that kind of answers that question for me, kind of going back full circle. So if God does any act, it is then moral because God is doing it.
Correct.
It doesn't necessarily make it okay for me as a human, but if God's doing it, it's fine.
Correct.
So if God decides to put people in eternal torture, it's completely fine for Him.
No, don't you can?
Well, hold on. I'll answer this, but I'll continue.
Okay.
I'll answer this, but I'll continue. I'll say yes, it is. However, there's a reason why it is. And part of the reason, because again, God is all things at once. So while He can make an act that for you and I are different, you have to understand God is also simultaneously just, meaning He cannot make an unfair decision. He will not make an unfair decision. Everything that God, again, in order to be God, He has to have fairness. He has to have pure just. He has to be omniscient. He has to be omnipotent. He has to be omnipresent. And He has to be fully just through and through. So if indeed God does make that choice to condemn people to an eternal, fiery, burning hell, there's a reason for it.
Okay, I know you're about to jump out of your seat, but let me get one more question in and then I'll let you have it.
Yeah,
I swear.
Go ahead.
I swear. Okay. Because I think once you answer this question, you're going to be able to just jump out of your seat and scream up and down. You're fine. I know that's what AAA wants to do right now. I can tell. Last question. If God commanded me to do something that would normally be immoral, would it be moral or immoral for me to do it? For instance, God told me specifically to go and kill a bunch of children in their sleep. Like God said, go into this campground that's like 20 miles up the street from your house, take a gun, murder those people. Like, just kill all of them. It's for my own purposes. I'm God. I am your God. I told you to do this. Go do it. Would that then be immoral, or would it be moral because God now commanded it? Now, I know, like, there's obvious, like, the whole Bible thing, but, like, let's just say hypothetically, this is possible. Like, God gave me direct instruction to do this. I'm not. I know it's a hypothetical situation only.
Yes.
But let's say the real situation is God has commanded me to do this. Would it then be moral
somebody in chat?
immoral?
Well, I will answer your question. I'll give you a direct yes or no. But before I do, I just want to reiterate the understanding. In order for God to be God, he has to be fully just. He cannot have any dealings with wrongdoing in and of himself. So I think that's a tough question because the next step is like, okay, so what if God told that guy said God told him, so it gets into, well, do you think it's possible that God would tell somebody? Did he tell somebody? Is he speaking to all the terrorists? Is he speaking to the Columbine shooters? Is he speaking to, who's he telling to do this stuff? And so that's where it's eventually going. But still, I'll give you a yes or no answer. And I would say yes. I would say if indeed, and it has to be indeed, God has told someone to do that, my answer would be yes. But I just want to clarify.
Okay.
Well, I don't even have to. Go ahead.
I set you up as best as I could. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, so because you're saying if God does something, it is good, or if God tells somebody to do something, then it's good. Okay.
Correct.
All right. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to religion or sacrilegious or blasphemous or anything like that.
No,
Go
ahead.
All right. And I hope this doesn't get us like.
That's why I didn't go.
It will.
I knew you were.
Oh, it definitely will.
Oh, okay. So, like, could God morally?
I have had someone ask me that question, so I would say, that's a tough question to get into because I believe it does have a finite answer, but I would say absolutely not. And the reason I would say not is because raping children is wrong. It is morally wrong. And I believe that when you're asking, can God, it's the same, even though it's not as gruesome, it's the same as asking, can God lie? It's the exact same. And it's like, you're as far as, again, God is omnipotent, meaning he can do anything. But it's like, okay, well, can he lie? It's like, well, no, he can't lie. The reason he can't lie is because, again, within his being, he has set forth the rules of the universe and right and wrong. So therefore, God cannot lie. God cannot tell a lie.
So
God
what
cannot
I'm
be deceptive.
But what I'm saying, so since it wouldn't be, if God were to rape a child, it wouldn't be wrong, right? Because he determined morality, right? Because when God does something,
again, it's the same. It's the same as lying. If God were to lie, is it right or wrong? It's like the question falls in on itself because, again, lying is wrong. So it's like, well, if God were to do it, is it wrong? Well, to ask the question, it's almost an impossible question to ask because God can do no wrong.
Okay, so
he's not going to. It's like,
right.
It's like, I understand the hypothetical approach, but it's like, it's not going to happen because, so even with the children rape thing, which is a horribly gruesome thing, by the way, but again, it's not going to happen because it's wrong.
So, okay, so God can morally kill children, and you agree to that, but he can't morally rape them.
Well, I didn't agree to kill children, but yes, kill people.
But that's the example you gave, because like there's examples of that happening in the Bible with the Mennonites, with the Amalekites, with the what's it called?
Midianites.
Yeah, etc. So
there's about
but there's examples
cases in which God kills everyone.
Yeah, so God can kill children.
The flood.
Yeah, right. But he can't rape. But he can't rape them.
Again, this is to dig into this.
Right. but I want to know, like, what's the difference?
And this is what I'll say. And you can take this to any specific action that you want. This is what I'll say. God can have or not can. God has no dealings with wrongdoing. God
Sure.
does
He,
no
but,
wrong.
what I'm
God
saying is he
cannot
has
do.
no.
Well, look,
I
I'll
agree.
let you again.
Okay.
I just want to state kind of my preface, and I'll let you. You can assimilate any act you want to it.
Okay.
This is what I'll say.
But
This is what I'll say.
what I want to ask is like, so like I know like God does not do wrong. What I'm saying is, what about raping a child would make it wrong? Because if God were to do it, it wouldn't be wrong. That's what I'm saying. So like he still wouldn't be doing anything wrong from your view, from what
Yeah,
from what I was understanding.
Just to piggyback
So
on that, it's just like in the clear examples in the Bible where God did kill all the children. You said like that's not wrong because God can't do wrong. There's no example that I know of in the Bible where God raped a child. However, if God were to do so, you say it's not wrong because God did it.
Well, I wouldn't go down that path. It's like I understand where you're going. I understand why you're going there, but I won't go down that path because again, and again, this is what I believe, and this is, I think, even myself as a human, I'm observing the world around me, and I believe God is part of the world around me. He's part of the world that he created. And so it's like, I know this, or what I believe I know this, in order for God to be God, he is immediately and eternally just. He has to be, or else he's not God. I also know that God is a decision maker. He makes decisions, and he also, and you can see this in the Bible, he also has decisions that he has made that he states that, you know what, I won't make that decision again, or I won't do that thing again. And that doesn't necessarily mean the initial decision he made was immoral. And so I'll say this, in order for God to be God, he can do no wrong. He is always just in every action that he takes, and he will always take the just action. Now, there may be things that seem heinous and vile and what have you. If God does it, there's a reason why he does. And and in order for us, we have to understand our place in the universe. And our place in the universe is creation. We are created, which means, and as sentient, intelligent beings, we have a lot of questions, and we have a lot of things that we are trying to understand. And I believe one day we'll understand it all. But as of now, the best we can do is just trying to understand it with our minds the best we can. And that's, that's what reality is. But so to answer your question, God is just.
All right. So I don't want to keep beating a dead horse. So I want to try to like, I have to mention it, but like, I'm not trying to go back there. What I want to know, not whether or not God would do it. What I want to know is what would make that, like, the thing that's stopping God from doing that heinous act. Mm-hmm. Like when he was said, like, because you said he wouldn't rape a child, right? Now, why wouldn't he do that?
Well, I think
because it's wrong, essentially, right?
Well, I would say yes, because it's wrong. But
why is it wrong?
I think it's wrong because it's essentially, it's the rules that he set forth. Now, do you find that in the Ten Commandments? No, you don't.
Couldn't he alter the rules? He could just
make it okay. Could he make anything okay?
Yeah, couldn't he just alter the rules? Yeah, he just alter the rules to make that fine.
Scenario over and over again, especially for the sake of censorship on YouTube.
Yeah, yes.
The long and the short is, could God make any act okay because he is God?
Well, I think, again, that's a tough question to answer, but I'll say this. This is what I'll say. God is just. And so it's like you're asking a finite question. You're asking for a definite, like, can God make anything just? It's like, on one hand, I almost want to say, yeah, he sure could. But I also know that our understanding and our understanding of the world around us, it is set forth by God. And so when our view on right and wrong, I believe that there's a heavy God influence in that within us naturally, and and consciously understanding from something like the Ten Commandments, for example, and understanding the Bible as a whole. And so I cannot answer that question in a finite way, because I think that in order to answer that question, it undermines the existence of who God is and what God is.
How about this
to begin with?
You said God is just. So what is just? Like what is justice? You're saying, like, essentially you're saying God is justice, right?
Yeah.
What's justice?
Well, and I will explain it as best I can from a human standpoint. So in order to have not
just a human standpoint, give me the most like accurate portrayal.
Well, I can only what I'm saying, what I meant by that is I can only explain it as far as my human mind will take me, as far as, so in order to have what is just, or something that is just, you have to have right and wrong. And so I would define justice as, or being just as doing right, or forthright actions, correct actions, moral actions. So God has no has no ability for immorality.
So good. So I asked you to describe what justice is, and you gave me a pretty good definition of justice. However,
decent.
Yeah. And so here's something that I noticed. You didn't need God to describe what justice was. You actually what justice, right? And you just told me you didn't. God wasn't anywhere in that definition. So since we have justice and we don't need God for that definition, we know what justice is. So now we have justice, right? And now we can use justice.
I wouldn't say we didn't
to establish
need God.
our moral system.
I didn't. Well, I mean, I might not have mentioned
your definition.
We don't need God.
Well, your definition didn't mention it because you.
I didn't. I said right and wrong, but then you have to dig into right and wrong.
Okay,
I said doing right,
all right.
Doing what is right. So then you have to dig into right and wrong.
I mean, that's
we
the
talk
ultimate
about
question is what is right and what is
right and
wrong,
wrong.
and how do you get to decide, right? Like that's the
well,
long
I
and the
don't
short
get
of,
to decide.
Right.
I don't think I get to decide. I think I observe as best I can.
But
so
your God does, right?
What makes something right? What makes something right?
I think, again, right and wrong is, and it gets real deep into the weeds. Like, for example, with right and wrong, I'm not referring to, for example, whether or not a person should exercise. I think that although exercise can be good for a person, or generally is good for humans, I don't believe failure to exercise is necessarily immoral. Like, I don't think you are an immoral person if you don't exercise.
How about you have two children, right? And you take care of them. I know. And so let's say you don't take care of them, right? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with neglecting kids, being a deadbeat dad?
I think that, well, for one, we, as a human, as an adult, you have children. If you don't take care of them, they'll expire, they'll die. I think that naturally our responsibility is to say it again.
What's wrong with them dying?
I think that, well, not necessarily anything if they die naturally, but I think if they die from a lack of, if they die from neglect, I think what's wrong with it is that they could have been taken care of, and and they starve or what have you, or however they get there, and that's I don't know the best word to use.
Well, sure. I still pretty much agree with you. So what I'm saying is, so you're describing. So what I'm saying is, since you can talk about how you could be a good dad, how you could be good, and God wasn't in the definition. So now you have good, and we talked about objectively. So you talked about the children starving or something like that because you're neglecting, right? Like I could just that to me that violates well-being, right?
Yeah,
if your presence contributed in no way to their well-being or lack thereof, it wouldn't be wrong for me because it wouldn't be any harm. It wouldn't be. So that's what I'm saying. So it is objectively wrong, because it objectively violates their well-being if you neglect your children.
Well, I think, see, that's an example where well-being is like, I'm fine with well-being. But again, well-being is not, there are things, well-being doesn't cover everything, was my point earlier. But well-being is, I'm fine. I'm okay with well-being.
But in this instance, I don't see how you would need a God for that, because we can determine whether or not it's objectively wrong for you to neglect your children,
Mm-hmm.
and we can just appeal to well-being.
Well,
Why
I do
appeal
think
to God?
I do think
it's
so. But let me
Mhm.
ask you this, and this gets and now it gets a little deeper. Where okay, so you and I both agree that we're able to determine that neglecting your children and letting them go malnourished and starve and die is wrong. It's not right, not good.
Mhm.
And okay, so you and I can determine that, but how? How is it that we can determine that? Why is it that we can determine that as sentient beings? Because there are a lot of mammals who kill their own children. There are mammals who will eat their own children, but we as humans don't. And again, why is it that we are able to determine that? How is that possible?
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought it was a rhetorical.
Rhetorical question. No, yeah. No. I'm asking how.
Well,
why is it that we're able to do that?
So
how is that
I was
possible?
a second. Just a quick time check. You good on time?
Oh yeah, I'm good right now. I'm waiting for her to text me.
Yes, I'm good on time. I got about 10 more minutes.
All right,
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll end in
give you the
5.
last 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I want to say the two. We're able to determine that because we're rational beings. We can we can do science essentially.
Mhm.
We're investigating. But I mean animals do that to certain extent as well. Like they can demonstrate moral behaviors like such as empathy and care about well-being. Like there's I don't want to get into the weeds here, but like I've seen like a study where they show these monkeys, they were punish people for pretty much crying wolf, right? Because they would say, "Oh, a predator's coming," all the monkeys run. Then that monkey that cried wolf went and gathered all the food, right? So you're stealing, that harmed the well-being. So animals can demonstrate morality too, although to a lesser degree. So to me, this would kind of serve my point. Like, I mean, surely. Monkeys don't have access to the Bible. They're just appealing to the well-being. So, because when they're saying something's wrong, they're punishing somebody because it's harmful to all their monkeys' well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, that would be all that you need. I don't think you need like a god monkey telling them, "Oh, this is wrong," blah, blah, blah.
Hey, yo, God monkey, I got you. No, I understand, and I think that for mammals in general, I think that instinctively they are built within them is a computer chip that's built to survive. So everything that they do is based on survivability, and I think that's just the way mammals are created in general. I believe that humans are different from the rest of mammals because of and now you get into, I believe humans have a soul. I believe that we're spiritual beings. I believe that we're more than just our flesh. And that's why we have the consciousness that we have, because we are more than just, although we're very similar to a lot of
that'd be a whole new debate topic.
Yeah, That's deep. But yeah, no, I'll tell you what, in this discussion, you really made me, I'm very interested in digging into just how deep well-being goes, and that using that as essentially a moral guide. Now I've already stated that I don't think it's big enough. I don't think it's wide enough, but I'm very interested now. I would like to dig deeper into that.
I'm gonna say one thing, and before we read that last word. When we talk about like well-being, like the limitations of it, the limitations isn't on well-being itself. It's on our understanding. It's on
our knowledge of it.
Yes, because so yeah, some very complicated problem. It either does or does not negatively affect us, or does.
Whether we can articulate all the complications or not, it does or does. I understand.
And those are all moral epistemic problems. However, it is still objective. You have secular, humanist, objective morality.
I understand where you're coming from. Now I'm interested. I'll dig deeper. I do think that when it's the world, it's the approach that you come from. I think that my approach, compared to your approach, see, I start with God because I think that existence starts with God. And so then, you know, when I'm making sense of the world around me, it starts with God. And even though naturally it might, yeah, it starts with me as a human because all I know is what I experience, what I see, smell, taste, hear, touch, you know. So very interesting discussion.
Yeah, man. Hey, appreciate you coming on. Did you want to
Last
before
word
we
of the
close?
show?
Yes, I saw you're doing some videos
Yes.
out in Buffalo. Really high quality videos, man. I was like,
man.
oh snap! But you put a whole lot of work into that.
Oh, I appreciate you, man. Yes.
Yeah, those are really good. They like, you plan on doing more videos like that?
Oh, dude, it has been a lifelong dream of mine to be a full-time or semi full-time YouTuber. And the only reason why I'm not is because for whatever reason, I kept stopping in my journey. And I think I am totally done stopping. Right.
Okay.
So I think at this point it is YouTube or bust. And so I told myself I'm going to give it a decade. I'm going to give it 10 years of a ton of effort. And if I get nowhere in 10 years, then I'll switch gears. but we got a decade to go. So I'm very excited about it, man. And right now, this is the style of video that I'm making. As a matter of fact, you know, it's interesting. We're having this discussion on Thanksgiving, the night before Thanksgiving. I went out asking questions, and I'll advertise one of my upcoming videos. I asked people if they believe in God when I went out, and so. Man, public interviews is what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to do that more extensively. I have a ton of content already filmed. It just needs to be edited. And so, yeah, man. Yeah, I'm excited about it. Really
Dude, well, we're going to plug it. It said, was it YouTube/Nico Nice?
Yep. YouTube/Nico Nice, NIKONICE. If you just type in Nico Nice, you can find me. I'm all over YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and I'll be looking to expand a lot more. I got a lot more content being edited and posted every single day.
Awesome. You got Twitter, TikTok, anything that you want to plug?
Yeah, so I do have Twitter. I'm very inactive on Twitter, but now that Elon Musk bought it, I think I might.
Okay. Oh, so you think it's good that he bought Twitter?
No, I don't. I think it's amazing that he bought Twitter.
Oh, okay.
I love it. I love it so much. And you know what? It's not even necessary. I don't come from this like saviorist mentality. Like, Elon, he did it. He bought Twitter. No, to me, you know, I'm just entertained by it all. I think it's a very interesting move. I think he made the move for a reason. You know, and I think it'll be interesting when it all shakes out. So yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I think I don't want to start another debate, but I think his approach to free speech, he calls himself a free speech absolutist. I think he's kind of a hypocrite because he's not really a free speech absolutist because he'll delete comments that criticize him. But also I think it's problematic. You can't just allow any type of speech. Generally,
yeah, I think, man, there's a whole lot of speech that I'm a free speech advocate. I don't know if I'm a free speech absolutist because I think there's a lot of things that people can speak about.
Yes.
That could be very problematic. That's it. But I think even if he does, not to get to another debate, but if he does delete a tweet, that doesn't mean he's not a free speech absolutist. He just made that decision that he no longer wants to have that publicly spoken about from his Twitter account. And that's what free speech is. You can choose what you want and do not want to have spoken about, right?
Yeah, sort of.
Like, I have a very expansive, like, you know, list of sexual desires, but I don't speak about them publicly. Like,
sure.
You know, I could if I wanted to, but I don't. No.
My understanding was free speech absolutism is that you do not censor anybody in any sort of degree. So you don't delete comments. You don't.
That doesn't include you. Can censor yourself.
Maybe he has a different definition of free speech.
I think he's referring to the public square.
Okay.
But you can censor yourself, certainly.
Sure.
Even as a free speech absolutist.
I agree you can censor yourself. Yeah, I get maybe he has a different definition. I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting stuff, man. But yes, I am on Twitter. Everywhere is Nico Nice, NIKONICE. You type that in on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. I just created a Facebook page actually, and I'll be posting videos from Facebook too. So I'm very excited about that. So yeah, so looking to increase and get a lot bigger. So
Awesome, man. Awesome, man. We're looking forward to have you on again sometime. We'll you already said several things like in this discussion.
yeah.
Want to bring you back on.
yeah, I like that. It's like I say something. It's like, wait a minute. Wait. We got to dig it. We got to dig it. No, seriously, I appreciate you having me on. I'm glad I was able to do it, man. And I'm excited for next time. Got a lot more to discuss.
I appreciate it, man. Facade, are you still there?
I'm still here. I just switched up the channel a little bit. I don't know if you guys are paying attention to what's streaming live, but I made Nico the main focus. I put up any questions up on the screen. Got a like and subscribe up there for our channel. Please go give Nico a like, give him a subscription.
Thank you.
Know you appreciate him. Obviously, thank you so much for coming on, Nico. It was really a pleasure. Just kind of changing things up at the last minute just to kind of catch people's attention and let people have focus on you. So,
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, I appreciate that, man. Again, anybody who's listening, anybody who listens in the future, I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you guys for the opportunity. It's been a blast, and we'll do it again sometime.
absolutely.
All right, appreciate it, my man.
Oh, lastly, sorry. Yeah. God loves you.
No, he doesn't.
Come on.
Biblically, he only loves some people. We'll talk about that sometime.
Yeah. Oh boy. Oh, good stuff, fellas.
All right, man.
All right, Nico. Appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
See you.
You too.
All right.
All right. That is it, guys. AAA, did you want to wrap up with anything not Nico related, just for the purposes of our show?
Sure.
Like I said, please leave a like, a subscription. We would really appreciate that. Please do go say hello to Nico. Give him a like and subscription as well. Do really appreciate him coming on. Housekeeping on our end before we wrap up.
Yeah, we got next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m. We're gonna have Morpheus on again. We're going to be discussing cancel culture. I will be arguing that cancel culture is good, and I'll be trying to convince him otherwise. He'll be trying to convince me otherwise. So.
All right. Well, thank you for chiming in and giving us some good feedback and questions in there. We had one from Chris Beats that just said, that's a good question. I said, thanks out in chat. But if you're still watching or paying attention, do appreciate you commenting, stopping by. Hope you enjoyed it. We try to do this weekly on Tuesdays. Wednesday's kind of an exception to the rule just because it worked better for Nico's schedule. If you have topic suggestions, questions, feedback, comment, you want to jump on the show, you want to join us, come get involved in this mess that we call life, come want to argue, we're here. We want to do it. We want to get you on. You don't got to be famous. You don't got to have a YouTube channel. You don't got to plug anything. Just like our boy Morpheus, you can stay anonymous if you want. We just love having a good discussion. We like to sharpen our brains, and we hope to see you guys next week.